to just welcome everyone to tonight's CCL training webinar. It's a weekly webinar program of CCLs that provides CCL supporters like you and I with access to in-depth training opportunities on topics related to climate change and effective climate advocacy, and tonight on how to track your effective climate advocacy. I'm your host, Brett Cease, and tonight's topic is using CCL's newfangled action tracker. We're going to join CCL's IT department for a training that's going to debut our new action tracker tool, an update to CCL's current field reporting system. The action tracker is an online application that's going to log and display the actions of CCL supporters like you and I that we're taking every day and provide that satisfaction of real-time data display. So with that though, let's jump in and do a quick introduction to our esteemed speakers today. We have with us tonight the wonderful Elena Coppa. Elena has worked with CCL since co-founding the Blacksburg, Virginia chapter in 2016. Previously, Elena served as the senior user experience designer for a large tech firm, and as CCL's user experience designer, Elena helps to understand us as our user pain points and expectations, improve our website workflows, and overall work towards creating a more positive online experience for all of us as volunteers. So you can see why she's been an invaluable addition to rolling out the tracker. With Elena tonight is Brian Herbson. Brian is a Nebraska native and has worked in IT for over 10 years. He has a passion for using technology to help solve problems. And as CCL's IT administrator and applications developer, he helps build tools like the Action Tracker that support staff and volunteers as they work on climate change solutions. And with Brian and Elena is the wonderful Craig Thompson. Craig has a passion for finding technical solutions, sense a theme here, to difficult problems, automating processes, applying artificial intelligence techniques to tease patterns out of noise. Prior to CCL, Craig worked for EHR company Epic, training software developers in programming languages and frameworks and leading the development of one of Epic's customer-facing applications. So with our panel introduced, let me walk through our 3 learning goals that we hope all of you take away from after tonight's training together. We're going to have the chance to really walk through how to start using CCL's action tracker to record your own climate advocacy actions and for your group, for those that are group leaders. We'll have the chance to really understand the design process behind this tool and the decisions made really in its creation process. And we'll also be able to look ahead, what you can expect moving forward with future plans and updates to the action tracker. So putting all that together, we'll start with exploring why the tracker was created in the first place. We'll then explore some of the exciting new benefits. Craig will then do some wonderful tutorials and walk you through how do you do all of these different actions. And then we'll hear from some testimonials and talk about future plans before getting to Q&A. But with that though, I'll pass it to you, Elena, and we'll get this show on the road. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
We've been working on this project for several months now, and along the way, we've had contributions from many people. CCL's IT team, which you'll be hearing from tonight, Evan Hahn, who's a CCL volunteer and has helped out on the IT side, CCL's marketing and program teams, CCL volunteers who helped out as beta testers and usability testers, as well as group leaders, state coordinators, and regional coordinators. So we wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about why we chose to pursue this project and why we made certain choices. While submitting field reports in the old system wasn't exactly hard, we knew from both our use of it and from feedback from volunteers that there were a lot of limitations around it. The first being when you submit a field report, it essentially went into like a black hole that was only accessible by CCL staff. So if you wanted to make a change or you realized that you submitted a duplicate report, you had to go through the process of reaching out to Sandy and asking her to make the change for you. In order to see how many field reports were submitted, you either had to keep track of them through your emails or wait for the spreadsheet to be sent at the end of the month. And who really likes the spreadsheets? And finally, all actions were being tracked by a chapter rather than by an individual. This led us to have very little knowledge about how many supporters are truly engaged, and this prevented CCL from having an understanding around how successful we are as an organization. So how did we go about creating the action tracker? We started by getting feedback from group leaders, regional coordinators, state coordinators, and staff on what information was necessary to capture and what we could cut to simplify the forms and make the data that we collected more impactful. Then we went on to understand the most efficient, beneficial, and secure workflow. And from there, we went through many iterations of designs until we found something that we were happy with, and we tested it. In order to make sure that this tool met the expectations of our volunteers and provided them with the most utility possible, before launching, we conducted 2 rounds of usability tests with 17 total participants. In addition, we had a handful of chapters tested out over the course of the past month to help us pinpoint any harder to detect bugs. So that doesn't mean it's perfect. There's a lot of things that our volunteers asked for that we didn't have time to work into this launch, but they're on our radar and we're constantly working to improve it. So with that, in review, due to the hard work of many and with unveiling of CCL's new action tracker, we've transitioned from a system before, like this on the screen, requiring group leaders to wait for monthly reports emailed to them via a clunky Excel file to download and open up this elegant live time display dashboard, making actions available and viewable all right from your CCL community account. And with that, I'll pass it to Brian to help highlight many of the exciting new benefits from the action tracker.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. So I'm going to briefly touch on what we see as really some of the key benefits to the new action tracker system. And some of these Elena touched on when she went over the thinking that went into the design and such. But broadly speaking, from a feature standpoint, what we see as some of the key improvements are an improved and intuitive design to the action tracker system, the ability to track these actions at the volunteer level rather than the chapter level, and add multiple volunteers to actions. We wanted to add new activity types that people could record. We wanted to make it easy to go back and view past activities that you recorded and then edit or delete them if you need to. And then, like we demonstrated there at the end, a good comprehensive overview of activities that are happening at the chapter, state, and region level that is up to date and easy to access. So from a volunteer standpoint, by far, the key feature was empowering volunteers to go in and record actions themselves. And to enable that, we knew that we needed to make what was previously a clunky system intuitive to use, fast and easy to add actions. And we also know that a lot of interaction happens between chapters. And so when chapters coordinate with each other, previously it wasn't possible to record those types of coordinated efforts. And so one thing that is in addition to what we've mentioned is the ability to have activities with folks from multiple chapters on them. And then lastly, we wanted to add additional activity types because, for example, it's a big deal if you are involved in a grass tops meeting. And it's a big deal if you go through the effort to research, write, and submit, for example, an LTE. And it wasn't possible to record those types of actions previously. And so those are some new activity types that we've added. From a group leader standpoint, we really wanted to ease the burden of having to go through at the end of the month, compile all of the actions that have happened over the course of a month, tally those, and then record them. Because of the fact that that wasn't an easy and smooth process, we know that actions would fall through the cracks. And so, for example, we know that we are historically underreporting the amount of activity that our volunteers engage in. And so hopefully this can help correct that. We also didn't want chapter leaders and admins to have to wait for those monthly reports to understand whether goals that they have set or activities that they are engaged in, whether those were successful or not. We also know that since previously field reports are at the chapter level rather than at the volunteer level, it was difficult to identify who your active volunteers were. And so having these being recorded by volunteers and having them be at the volunteer level helps us understand who's involved so that we can recognize their efforts. Importantly, some of the additional field report types that we have are chapter development activities. So we wanted to add the ability to record chapter meetings, for example, and make it easy to tell and to record which volunteers were present at meetings, as well as other types of chapter development activities. So for CCL as an organization, we really, similar to group leaders, we wanted to make it easy to understand engage volunteers. And for the same purposes as group leaders, we wanted to be able to tell whether our training efforts and whether our monthly actions, whether those are effective. And then we also want to be able to understand or be able to make the tie between progress that's happening at a congressional level back to activities that our volunteers are engaging in. And then going forward, what we'd really like to do is ensure that this is a motivational tool. We plan on doing things like adding community badges and things like that to help make this a process that is fun and that encourages people to get involved and to take action. So that's really the key benefits. And with that, I'll hand it over to Craig, who's going to demonstrate the tracker.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm going to go over a number of things, and you can see the list of the bulleted list here of the different features that we're going to go over. And we're going to walk through all of these. We want to make sure you're comfortable with these things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing that that is probably the most important is, how do we actually get to the action tracker? So I'm here in CCL Community on my home page, my home dashboard. And the first way that you can get to the action tracker is the same way that you've gotten to field reports before. If you've been logging field reports, under my tools on your home page, you'll see the action tracker. It used to be called field reports, so we've left that there in parentheses just so people who are looking for that don't get confused. And we've also included a link right up top on the left. It's got a neat little icon there designed by Brett that we can use to access that, at least for the next couple months. That link will be up there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the action tracker. And there's three main pages that we're going to go over today. The first one is the chapter actions page, and this is kind of your home page. Basically, what this is a list of the actions that have been taken in your chapter. So I can see there was a phone call on October 6th, for example, to Ayanna Presley. There was a meeting with House staff. There was a chapter development planning meeting to do some social media action planning, some letters to members of Congress, letter to the editor, etc. So this is just kind of a reverse chronological list of all the actions. And you can see, if I click on these, I can see some more details about them. You can see the type of action that it is, the date that the action took place, and also, different from field reports, you can see who participated in the actions as well. So I can see that David Mazumder actually made this call to Ayanna Presley, and who is doing the social media planning. I can see the list of people that were in that meeting, etc. You can also filter by various action types. So maybe I am just interested in looking at the contacts with legislators, for example. So I can filter on that and see the various contacts with legislators. Or maybe I want kind of all of the ways that we've met with legislators. So I'll include lobbying in there as well. And I can see that meeting with House staff shows up. I can also filter by participants. So if I want to see all the things that I've been doing, for example, you can click on Craig Thompson, and these are only things that that I have participated in. And again, I can add more than one participant here as well. And now David Mazumder's activities show up here also. There are a few more things on this page that you can do, but we're going to come back and revisit this, since this is kind of our home page and it's what we'll default to. And for now, I want to go over to the action dashboard, which is my personal favorite. So I'm going to go over to the menu here and on the left and click Action Dashboard. And I love the Action Dashboard because it gives you a graphical view of trends about your chapter. So here I can see these are the actions for my chapter, Boston, Massachusetts. And I can see what the action has looked like over the past year. I can see, there was a little bit of a dip during COVID and over the summertime, and I can also see that our actions have been picking back up again recently. If I want to see the raw numbers for each of the different types of actions, those are listed down here in the cards. I can also hover for a particular month. So for example, in February, I can see there were 3 outreach actions and 12 contacts with legislators. And I can filter as well on these various types. So, for example, maybe I'm interested in just the contacts with legislators and lobbying events. I can also change the time that I'm looking at. So I can see what our activity was like last year, or what our activity has just been year to date, so starting in January. And further, I can zoom out in scope. So right now I'm just looking at my chapter, but I can also look at my entire state. And I can look at my entire region as well. And if you're a state coordinator or you're a regional coordinator, you'll have a few other options to look at more chapters and more states here as well. So you can slice and dice this in any way you want. So for example, maybe I want to see how all of these compare to each other, but there's a little bit of noise coming from the contacts with legislators, because at CCL we do a lot of that. So maybe I'll filter that one out, and I can compare the different values of outreach versus media. Or maybe I'm just interested in seeing how is our media trended, for example. And I can filter down on that. So we encourage you to slice and dice this however you want, to look for trends, and to gain insight into what's happening and what's not happening in your chapter. And that will hopefully help you set goals appropriately for your chapter. Great. So how do you actually log one of these actions? How do you actually, create a data point in this dashboard? So for this, you can go to log an action. There's also another button back on the chapter actions page, log an action up here, that you can click to log an action. So either of these will work. I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. And this is basically the form that you'll use to log an action. So first, what qualifies as an action? What things should you be entering into the action tracker? And the things that qualify as an action should check the following 3 boxes. So it should meet these 3 criteria. It should build political will for climate change. It should be consistent with CCL's core values. So things like respect and integrity, being nonpartisan. It should be related to one of the levers of political will. So let's say I want to log an action. The first thing that I need to do is I need to select the lever that it belongs to. So you can see we've broken this out into the various levers here. This is contacts with legislator, right, or lobbying action. We have grassroots. We have grass tops. We have media publications and chapter development. And you can see there's some new things that weren't here from field reports, as Brian and Elena mentioned, right? We couldn't log grass top meetings before. We couldn't log chapter development activities before. So those are available. There's a few other new types of actions in here that I'll highlight. So inside of contact with legislator, go ahead and click next. You can see the ones that we're used to having, but also we've added social media interactions. We often include as actions, we say, tweet your legislator, do that. So you can click on social media interaction, choose the legislator that you interacted with, or maybe more than one legislator, et cetera, and log that. I'm gonna go ahead and go back. Let's actually go through and log a letter to the editor, so we can see how we can log a submitted letter to the editor and then later come back and publish it. So I'm gonna click media/publication. And there's another option down here that's also expanded. You can choose whether an action was trying to influence federal level legislation or state level legislation. So for example, maybe my letter to the editor was about HR 763, maybe the Energy Innovation Act, in which case I'd leave this federal, that's the default. But I might have also been working to advance some state level legislation. There was a bill introduced in Massachusetts by Representative Benson that we've been working hard to try to get passed in Massachusetts legislature. So if my LTE was about that, I could choose state. Or if I was contacting a state legislator about state level legislation, I would choose state, something like that. So I'll leave this as federal, and I'll go ahead and click next. And this was a letter to the editor, so I'll choose that. And we'll say I submitted this to the Boston Globe. Boston. Better climate solution. And I'll paste in some text here. And when was it submitted? Let's say I submitted this yesterday or 2 days ago, we'll say. And you'll notice this publication status down here, right? So I can leave this unchecked if it hasn't been published yet, which is probably how you'll start entering letters to the editor. As soon as you enter it, as soon as you send it off, you can log it, you'll leave this unchecked, select next, and then I can say who was involved in this action. So by default, you'll be put there and you'll be given a role, and I was the author of this. Great, so that's good. But I also want to give some credit to Seema because Seema helped me edit this. So she's marked as a contributor. If she was an author, I could change her role, and different roles will show up for different things. So for like for chapter development activities, there will be organizer and participant as roles. So it'll change depending on the action. Let's also add Tammy. Tammy helped me edit this. And Tammy is actually not showing up here. And that's because Tammy recently joined the Boston chapter from Panama. So I'm going to search for her in the Panama chapter. You'll notice this add from chapter. Currently, we're only searching in the Boston chapter, but sometimes you have actions that are joint chapter actions, and you want to include people from multiple chapters. So I'm going to include the Panama City chapter here, and I'll search for Tammy Kellogg, and there she is. And I'll add her to the action. So this looks good to me, and I'll submit it and get a nice little message here. Awesome work. Thanks. I think it was awesome also. And you can review your activity. So here you can see what you submitted right in line. If I made a mistake, I can edit that. So maybe this wasn't the actual title. Maybe it was a better climate solution for our children's future. So you can edit this in line by clicking on the pencil on any of these. Looks good. I'll click the back to recent chapter actions list. And sure enough, there it is. A better climate solution for our children's future. Yay. There are some actions, so I logged this using the log action button. Some of the actions that you do in CCL will be automatically logged. So you don't have to enter them here. For example, anything you do through our online action tools, like the monthly calling campaign, or if you submit letters to members of Congress, like this one, for example, this was probably done through our online action tools. Those will automatically get imported to the action tracker and will show up here. So you don't need to log those again. It may take a day or two in order for that sync process to run, but they will show up here. So let's actually go in and edit this, and let's mark it as published. So I'm going to click on this. Or actually, there's a couple ways you can do this. I could click on this. I could also use these options here. This will also give me the ability to delete if I made a mistake. So I'll go ahead and edit this, and let's mark it as published. This article is published. Cool. I'll say it was published on the 8th today. And you notice I can't save it just yet because it requires me to enter a link to the publication. So I'll go ahead and record that link to the publication. I'll click save and go back to the chapter actions list. So editing should be a pretty easy and intuitive process using the action tracker. You'll notice that I have edit abilities for a lot of these. There are, not everybody will have editing capabilities for everything. If you enter an action, you will be able to edit that action and you'll be able to delete that action. If, however, somebody else created an action, you can still view that action, but you won't have editing capabilities. We don't want to open the door for somebody for a troll to happen to come in and muck around in our actions. However, because I'm logged in as a chapter admin, and this is true for group leaders as well, I do have the ability to edit and delete any of these. So if you're a group leader or you're a chapter admin, you can come in. If you happen to see a duplicate or something like that, you can delete it or edit it. And the one other piece of functionality that I want to highlight here is this Add Me button. So this Add Me button will appear for appropriate types of activities like chapter development activities, outreach events, grass top meetings, things where there's often more than one participant that helps make something happen. And we encourage you to use this Add Me button if you were part of that event. So I was part of this chapter development meeting, this social media action planning. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add Me. And sure enough, now I'm part of the list. And you can use this for chapter meetings, for example. So you can create a chapter meeting and you can say, hey, everybody take a moment to check into the chapter meeting by adding yourself. The last things that I want to cover are what do you do if you get stuck or you want to send feedback. So in the top right of each of these pages, the chapter action page, action dashboard, and recording in action, we have some help links right here. So here, and it's contextual, so I can click on this, and that will give me a little video on how to use the chapter actions page. There'll also be a link to the FAQ in that little drawer there. And if I did this while I was logging in action, that video would be about logging in action on the action dashboard. And the last thing is, how do you send feedback? There's a button down here in the bottom left. If you are having an issue if you notice an issue, or if there's something else that you would like to see in the action tracker, we welcome your feedback. We are reading these, and we are working on rolling out some enhancements as we speak. So please send us feedback. We welcome it, and we will take it to heart because we want to make this tool as good for you as possible.
Questions. We're just going to do one last section here, and then we'll go to the phones. I think Brian's fingers are about to fall off, but we're keeping up with most of the chat questions, so keep them coming, and then we'll get more distinction here in just one last section. One thing that we did want to highlight is that you don't just have to take our word for it. For the beta testers that were involved in really trying this out, just a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of support you can see here, ranging from loving the dashboard, really being excited about the ability to add that op-ed or that LTE that was submitted, even if it wasn't published, the ability to have it be easy to use and edit, lots of volunteers, lots of support and interest and enthusiasm. And what I'd love to do before passing it back to you, Brian, to talk about future plans is just highlight a quick little 2-minute testimonial from one of our wonderful group leaders, Barbara Moulton, who had the chance to really be a part of the debut. So here's Barbara's words.
I'm Barbara Moulton. I've been involved with CCL since, 2013? Something like that, and a group leader almost that long in Santa Rosa, California. Well, one of the most exciting things is that it offers the possibility for all of our members to track their own contributions, to enter them, and thus engage them more in CCL community, give them more power. And it also simultaneously takes a load off me of having to be sure I've caught everything. And what if I missed that? And oh yeah, I forgot to do that. Will I remember it? So that's a real win-win, I think. A second thing that's very exciting about this is the graphic display of the information, which is so much more accessible than the little reports that the group leaders used to get once a month. I think it'll really help people just in an instant see what's going on. And so I really like that part of it. Well, one of the things that was a problem with the prior system was that if I made a mistake or accidentally reported something twice, man, I had to write in and somebody would have to clean up my act for me. This way, I can go in and say, oh, okay, there it is. I'll fix it before anybody sees it. It's easier than filling out the forms that we used to have. It also includes more stuff. So we all get to include those letters to the editor that we've drafted and sent and not got published, and drafted and sent another and not got published. Well, those all go in there and they get counted up front And that's really a nice thing, because we know that those things help whether or not they get published. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about tracking our chapter meetings. I think it's really good for engaging people and tracking a whole lot more information.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think one of the things that she highlighted in the interview here we didn't have a chance to put in the final cut here is just, this is new technology. This is going to take a while for all of us to learn. So don't be afraid for asking for a buddy to learn together too, whether it's one of us here on the line or somebody in your local chapter to explore in tandem. I think as we get used to this, we can help all of our chapters and the volunteers within that really get familiar with this through that one-on-one process of mentoring each other. So with that, I'll pass it to you, Brian, here for this final slide, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Right, yes, thank you. So as Brett just mentioned, and as Craig touched on, this is definitely a work in progress. This is something that we're going to be continually iterating on, improving, getting feedback on, and trying to make it a better tool for you guys. So please, again, this is a pitch for that feedback link that you'll see on the Action Tracker pages. Let us know what features are missing. Let us know what sticking points you run into. Even let us know what's working well. And we'll take all of that feedback and try to make it better. I wanted to highlight, though, a few things that we know are kind of high priorities on our roadmap. First, we want to, again, add community badges for this to make this a motivational tool to recognize and reward people for actions that they're taking. We plan on adding several additional action types. Some of the key ones there are adding chapter lobby meetings, and have that be integrated in this tool rather than in the meeting minutes form. We would like to integrate this with the Grasstops engagement tracker so that information from the tracker would appear here when you're going to record Grasstops meetings, as well as have that record directly back to the Grasstops engagement tracker so that there's not a duplication of efforts there. We'd like to make numerous improvements to the dashboard. We've had requests for additional timeframes or being able to customize the timeframe that you're looking at better, and then the ability to export reports so that you can get something similar to what you get in those monthly field report forms, but just be able to get that directly from the dashboard, looking at the time frame that you're looking at. And then lastly, we'd like to make this more mobile friendly. It is responsive, it is mobile friendly, but what we'd like is to make it easy to add a link to the app to your phone's homepage. And kind of what we're picturing is having it be just really simple to have your volunteers pull up the app and record that, hey, I'm at a tabling event, I'm at a chapter meeting, or what have you. It's just whatever we can do to ease the burden of making it easy to record these actions and use the tool.
So with that, this tool is coming to a chapter near you. At this point, the link to the tracker is in the chat. You know where to find us. We're only as good as the feedback we're getting, so keep letting us know what you miss, what you like, what you want to see improved. But I think I'll close tonight just by highlighting gratitude all of us on the line and everyone else feels for the hard work the IT team and all the testers have done to get us to this point. Thank you all for making time, for being on our training tonight, and we look forward to hearing from you. So stay safe, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration. And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.